January 23rd. And it's 7 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Armstrong.
Here.
Councilmember Rubio. Here. Councilmember Veros.
Here.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Here.
And Mayor Hudson.
Here.
You.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 3, announcements. 3.1, changes and additions to the agenda. There are none this evening. Item 3.2, if you would like to speak under public comment or regarding an agenda item, please fill out a speaker card located in the back of the room and bring it forward. Item 4, public comment.
Okay, public comment is open. Now is the time for anyone to address the city council on any item not on the agenda, or if you wish to have an item pulled from the consent calendar and the reason why you'd have it pulled. Ask that you seek your comments less than 3 minutes or up to 3 minutes. Do we have any cards?
We do. Looks like we have one for this item.
Okay.
Linda DeChambeau.
Hello, Honorable Mayor, Council members. I'm Linda DeChambeau. I'm with Contra Costa Climate Leaders. I'm also a former mayor of Moraga, and item not on your agenda that I wanted to raise your attention. Something we worked at back in the 2010s was something called a sunshine ordinance. And a lot of cities adopted a sunshine ordinance, which require all meetings, whether they were 2, 3, or more members on an ad hoc committee, to be subject to the Brown Act. So I just want to call attention or recommend that San Ramon might consider adopting what's called a sunshine ordinance, so that when you do have an ad hoc committee of 2 members, that they would be subject and open to members of the public. You would have a staff liaison, staff reports, and members of the public could attend and participate in that.
Thank you. You know, we can't discuss that because of that Brown Act, but next item, or anyone else?
Not for this item, no.
Okay, is there any written comments?
Not for this item.
Okay, we'll close the public comment. Next item, please.
Item 5, consent calendar.
Okay. Well, I'm really slow today. Let's get this. Thank you. Consent calendar items are generally routine in nature and acted upon by a single action. Is there anybody wishing to pull an item? Do we have any cards?
Not for this item.
Anyone from the council?
I'll move the consent calendar 5-1 through 5-6.
I'll second.
Oh, there we go.
I think Marisol beat you to
Yeah,
it.
she did. I'm talking and she's doing. Right.
Yeah. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. And end it. It looks like it's 5-0. That passes. What's next?
Item 6, special presentations, we have none. Item 7, deferred consent items, we also have none this evening. Item 8, unfinished business, there is none. And item 9, new business. Item 9.1, resolution 2024-011, declaring the intent of the San Ramon City Council to renew the San Ramon Valley Tourism Improvement District and fixing the time and place of a public meeting and a public hearing thereon and giving notice thereof. Staff report by Scott Cole, Deputy City Manager.
You have the floor, Scott.
Good evening, Mayor,
Gonna
Council.
spend our money, huh?
Somebody else's money here.
So that's the next second item. So first item tonight, you get to hear from me a lot tonight, so forgive me. First item is on our Tourism Improvement District, the San Ramon Valley Tourism District, otherwise known as TBID, or also colloquially known as Discover San Ramon. The action tonight is for you to consider creating or opening the public hearing, which would then take effect or open up on February 13th. So brief history. The assessment district, also known as Discover San Ramon, was established in 2015. It's been in place ever since. The rate is $2 per night for short-term stays. There are some exceptions. For instance, long-term stays, government employees who pay from their agency, are not subject to that fee, but that $2 rate gets collected by the city. We are the administrator, at which point we take a small administrative fee, but more importantly, that money is then funneled back into marketing campaigns for the particular district and those hotels that are impacted. As you all know, well by now, there are 5 hotels that are in this district that pay that rate. And ultimately, tonight is, I should also say, the primary focus of this, of course, has historically been marketing the district for tourism, marketing the city to bring people here. And it also, of course, impacts the local economy. So renewal of the T-bid, some of the terms, the rate stays exactly the same at $2. The district is not proposing a change. They are, however, requesting a longer term. It's historically been 2. They are asking for 5. That allows them time to establish their district plan and implement. And we will also ensure that we have someone from the district here. If the public hearing is established for February 13th, we will have someone here to answer any council questions. Tonight's action would be whether or not we initiate that public hearing on February 13th. But I will quickly walk through the timeline. So, of course, tonight we establish, if you say yes to move forward with the public hearing, in 2 days, we would send out a notice to those hotels and businesses that are impacted in the district. February 13th, we would hold a public meeting to hear any protests. And if there are some, of course, we would hold the next meeting April 9th. If none, the council could consider at that point adopting a resolution to enact the Tourism Improvement District. And with that, I will turn it over to all of you.
Okay, any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, Scott.
Okay,
To Scott.
in the recommendation, it is we approve the resolution which declares the intent. Is that, do I understand that correctly? That we, it's your recommendation that we approve resolution 2024-011, which declares the intent to proceed.
Yes.
Okay, that's my only question.
Okay, anyone else? We should open it to the
It
public.
is not to
Go ahead,
renew,
Sridhar.
just intent is to proceed for the renewal process.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Open the public.
Okay, let's open it to the public. Do we have any cards?
I do have 1 card for this item. Heidi Keniston Lee.
HKL.
Hello, Mayor Hudson, Vice Mayor Perkins, and City Council members. My name is Heidi Keniston Lee. I'm the President and CEO of the San Ramon Chamber of Commerce, and I just have a few brief comments. The San Ramon Chamber of Commerce is grateful to our tourism district, also known as Discover San Ramon, for their support and partnership that has allowed us to further promote San Ramon businesses and economic vitality and to invest in and celebrate our community. With the renewal of Discover San Ramon, we are confident that there will be many effective opportunities to further collaborate with Discover San Ramon to showcase San Ramon as a premier destination where people want to stay, work, play, live, and do business. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
That was the only request for this item.
Okay, do we have any written comments?
No.
We'll close the public comment before the council.
I'll move we adopt resolution 2024-11 and proceed to hold the public hearings and
These guys are quick.
yeah.
Second.
Fixing the time and place of public meeting, public hearing for the next meeting of February 13th.
I second.
I think you're too late. Okay,
There we go.
we got them. Looks like we all approved that one. Okay. Next item, please. Thanks, Scott.
Item 9.2, discussion of on the formation of a Sustainability Commission Committee or Task Force. Staff report by Scott Cole, Deputy City Manager.
Good evening again. Tonight, we are here to discuss the Environmental Ad Hoc Committee that was formed mid last year and the process of evaluating and surveying the region And that's what I'd like to present to you, what we found in that survey. So on the slides that you see presented, here is a brief run through. This is what we presented at the public meeting on January 10th. This is also what I'd like to walk through tonight. Some clarification of terminology, the survey results, our climate action plan or CAP timeline, and then open it up for some discussion with the council. So first, I'd like to talk about some terminology to clarify sort of how we thought about a survey. Not every city uses exactly the same nomenclature, so it's important to set terms so we understand what we're talking about. A commission is the sort of highest order board or group. It's where council delegates some of its authority or responsibility to a subordinate board or commission, in this case, spelling out those duties within the municipal code. A committee would be a group that advises, recommends policy to the council, but does not hold any responsibility that the council would cede to them. And then the last terminology that people use, I didn't represent it here, but people will often or sometimes use a board. It lacks specificity, and so we choose not to use that given its lack of precision. So this last term that I think is important to delineate is a task force, which would be sort of a limited term focused on a particular item, and or a workshop, which would be a specific event around like talking about the CAP. So diving into, this is a summary of the survey. I'd like to walk you through what we found. Those results were, I'm generally using the term committee here. That's almost exclusively what cities I found in 26 cities that I surveyed across the region, from the North Bay, South Bay, on the peninsula, in the East Bay. They were featured in the survey, which I have those results if we'd like to discuss them further. But of all 26 that we surveyed, 17 of the 26, in fact, have an established committee, not a commission, not a task force, but a committee where they meet regularly. That schedule we'll talk about in a minute. But they, I'm just going to say generally, have a committee, commission, or board. That's what they call it. Commission is a tricky word, which we will get to in a minute.
So 9 of the 26 that you looked at had nothing. Now we have 105 or 110 cities throughout the Bay Area. And so your survey wasn't quite that broad.
That's correct.
You just chose 26.
Yes.
How did you choose those 26?
So I spent considerable energy picking East Bay cities and then thought, so I don't get locked inside the East Bay, looked in the South Bay, looked in the North Bay, and pulled some organizations from each area just to make sure that we didn't kind of get locked in one particular kind of thought process. Like the East Bay can sometimes move together. So we looked at the like Novato in the North Bay, looked at some different cities in the South Bay, Palo Alto and others. So another important takeaway in the survey was whether or not the organizations that in fact do have a committee, commission, or board, do they require as part of participation some representation from the trades? So that would be someone from the building trades, you fill in the blank. So of that, 8 of those 17 cities that have a board, commission, or committee, 8 of those 17, in fact, do require some representation from the trades. The last element that's important for this conversation is how frequently those groups meet, those entities meet. And of those surveyed, of the 9 of the 17, in fact, meet every other month or quarterly. Largely, some of those in there, in fact, did meet monthly originally and then sort of shifted, which is an important theme we'll find, I think, in many organizations. It doesn't remain static. The city in question will look at their commission, committee, or board and then evolve over time. It doesn't just stay as is. It's important to always be evaluating. So then the next aspect is, what would this committee, commission, or board do? What do these agencies that have them, what do they expect from those committees? So these duties are general in nature or generic in nature, but we'll walk through them, probably not surprising. climate action plan updates. They will review the climate action plan and make recommendations to council. They will look at open space and how it impacts the environment. They will recommend, of course, policies. They will evaluate emerging issues, typically around legislation. They will, in fact, this is where a number of them line up. The Venn diagram overlaps considerably with education and outreach. That's where a lot of these committees focus their energy, is getting the community residents here to get behind particular initiatives, generally saying like planting trees, cleanup, creek cleanups, getting people to adopt more green aspects around their lives. And so it's generally education, some outreach, and then some kind of action. Hayward, for instance, has a requirement part of their board where every month they have an event and you must attend a certain number of them to remain on the committee.
Do they get to explore, like the grants that are available for sustainable?
Yes, the reason I didn't list that here is I was trying to find those kind of overlaps where all of those have some element of what you see on this screen. Some of the agencies that I evaluated have had grants that they evaluated, but not all of them. So I tried to find something that was generally true for all of those entities that had a commission or committee. Mhm. So this is the takeaway, which actually Councilmember Burrow sort of gets at what you're asking. Some takeaways from the survey that we found. The approach varies, but there is a lot of similarity in what duties they expect and how they kind of go about getting the work done. How they define their group is a challenge, which is why we use the terminology at the beginning. Almost all of them have a committee. And I'll use as an example here, the city of Novato refers to it as a commission. But when I actually interviewed the assistant city manager there, what I learned is they use the term commission like we would use the word committee. They do not have council authority. Nothing is delegated to them. They are an advisory body. They call all of their committees commissions there. So second thing would be opportunities. Councilmember Burrows, this is where the grants fall in. Some leverage those groups. Some opportunity that presents would be staff that actually oversee the committee, also take charge of kind of overall management of grants. So basically it amounts to what the city of San Ramon would like to do if we entertained a board, commission, or committee. What sort of duties would we want to assign, and we can create our own path, essentially. And another important element of the takeaway is some entities actually started real small and scaled up. So for instance, start with a workshop, a task force, and then over time evolve to something bigger. So start small and go bigger. Others went big and then decided to scale back. So it really depends on the city and how they want to approach the issue and what kind of feels right here. And last, but certainly not least, the intention, the purpose for everyone is to make an impact locally. What can we do about this wildly difficult problem? The impact is all about local while we're thinking global. And so everybody, every entity I surveyed had some sense of what impact meant locally, and they defined that in the duties, and that's sort of the takeaway here. Important element to consider is the timeline of our climate action plan. We held the public forum on the 10th. Here we are tonight. This was the initial timeline we presented at the public meeting. My apologies. We have a follow-up timeline that's been adjusted after some further review, but the Planning Commission was originally slated for February, council hearing in March, and then adoption, early spring. We've now revised that timeline based on better information. So of course, the public forum, council deliberation. If the council would so choose, we could hold a workshop about the climate action plan and the update process and sort of link it up with the timing of the planning commission. And then ultimately it just moves everything out thereafter. And all of this is in case you want more detail, we have our team from community development here in case I've missed something or you have questions. But ultimately, this is where I will turn it over to all of you. Those are the takeaways from the public meeting and the survey. The more nuanced kind of takeaways from the public meeting, I think would be best summarized by the council. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, a climate action plan is a required document for each city in the state. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a legislative timeline? Like we had to have a housing element done by a year ago. And Debbie's shaking her head no. There's no timeline. So the fact that we have one satisfies the current requirement, but the fact of the matter is it's badly out of date. Can you speak to that, Debbie? Of course you can.
Everybody loves a volunteer.
Yeah, Lauren says, go for it, Debbie, go.
He's my expert. No, so we do have a current climate action plan. So it's a qualified cap, but it is dated as so noted by Councilmember Perkins. And so the intent is to update that cap. There is no legislative timeframe, but what happens is the longer you don't have a new qualified cap, as you review housing projects or development applications, you have to be able to demonstrate that it does meet the target reductions. And so without a qualified cap, well, like I say, with a qualified cap, we can check that box on our CEQA checklist. Yep, qualified cap meets reduction targets. No further analysis is required. Without a qualified cap, then you potentially are taking longer to approve housing projects and meet our RENA allocation. So that's the delaying the adoption of a having a qualified cap just makes your review process a bit longer because you have to do that analysis to demonstrate that the project does meet your target emissions. It may meet it on the face of it, but it may need further study through the environmental process. So that's the
Our
downside.
cap shows emissions for all the AB 32 chemicals or whatever they are, just, what are we just doing, CO2 or?
It's whatever is required to show the emissions to meet the 2045 standards, all that
Good stuff.
all that good stuff we got to look at. Yeah.
So as projects are received for review, they're reviewed in the context of the current cap. And that would proceed until we adopt a new cap is.
Well, we just did adopt an EIR that talks about our target reduction. So we would use our newly adopted EIR for the general plan update we just completed as our basis for our evaluation. So some projects on the face, because they're so small, will incorporate mitigation measures that will show that the project will meet reductions based on how the project's going to be construction, all electric, for example, as we see with the Summerhill project.
Okay.
Go ahead. You had a question, Mark, or Marisol?
So, sorry. So even though we don't have, there is no requirement, so this is kind of, really arbitrary. To your knowledge, what is the typical frequency with which cities who do or would be considered to be staying on top of their climate action plan, how often do they tend to update it?
5 years? Yeah, 3 to 5 years typically. And, we do a biannual report. So every year to the council of how we're meeting our emission reductions. So at any time during that process, if we see a change that has to be done, we certainly can bring forward a modification to that cap by resolution too. So it's a living document.
Yep, that was something I actually had asked about. I
good.
remember I
There you
used
go.
that same word, a living document. I did have one other question. Just for clarification, because I know our deputy city manager made a mention of for the clarity of the public, I want to make sure they understand the definition of committee or commission at the end of the day is something that the roles and responsibilities and the duties they have is something that would come back to the council for consideration, correct?
I'll leave that to the city manager.
So yes, it's at the discretion of the council. So if the council decides to either form a commission or a committee, we would ask for direction on developing that charter, that charge, the specific duties. And we need that in order to develop our work plan for the year to set the expectations and meet those expectations of whatever committee's formed. So typically, and we haven't really, I believe the last committee that we formed was the ITAC, and the one before that escapes me, but we typically have a draft charter for that committee or commission before consideration. Commission is a bit more difficult to form because you're actually talking about, I believe, going into the Muni code and, you know, assigning powers to that commission via the Muni code. So there's additional steps, but yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sridhar. I had a question, and Debbie, you might be able to answer this, but the climate action plan is really a limited in scope document, right? This isn't something where we can just put whatever we want into a climate action plan. There's certain state requirements that we have to demonstrate that we're meeting those state requirements. Is that correct? I mean, how much
That does.
flexibility do we have to just add a whole lot of stuff into it?
Well, is the cap to be qualified has to meet the state requirements for target reductions. That's your minimum level. It's like the building code. It's the minimum level for construction, right? You can always go above that if you want to and have more restrictive requirements for the city, but that also comes with a cost too. It's a balancing act, basically, and how restrictive those new additional measures may become has an impact the ability for the city to, on its own, as a city, meet those reductions or those higher thresholds because the cost of those potential measures, and how difficult is it for maybe housing development to continue with those higher restrictions or meet our arena numbers too. So it's a balancing act. But we will, our intent is to bring to the commission and council a cap that meets all the state required mandates.
And would you say that, I mean, at the end of the day, our policy is becoming more and more aiming to move in the direction of clean renewable energy. So all these efforts and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, if we are proactive about it, at the end of the day, it's an expense that will either be had now or later. And it actually may be more costly later because if we are already building out, wouldn't it make more sense to do it from the get-go?
It depends. It's really kind of a theoretical question based on what measures you're thinking of including above and beyond what's required by the state and what the cost of those measures may be and what technology is out there to implement them now or down the road. So it's
Right.
really something that would have to be analyzed as we go forward.
Absolutely. Make sure that it's rolling out in a way that's kind of in sync with the infrastructure, but also making sure that we're planning ahead and not investing in technology or approaches that are going to die out within the next 5 years or so.
Understood.
Well,
So I
maybe
have.
we have, go ahead, Sridhar.
So Debbie, do we have any consulting company or any other organization who's assisting you with the cap elements?
We do. As part of the general plan update, the contract we executed back in 2021, maybe, we do have Rincon Associates who has been working with us on developing the climate action plan. And if you recall, last summer, we were starting to discuss this topic, we indicated that they had presented to us some implementation measures that were, that we need to further examine because there's the cost of how the city implements those and cost to residents. But that's our next step is really taking those measures they provided to us and then starting to analyze how they fit into a cap and how they help the city meet the reductions. Our delay was caused by the state accelerating our housing element update that we had to complete and then gain the general plan in line with the housing element to avoid builder's remedy. So here we are now at this point in time, moving forward with the cap update.
Okay, thank you. And who are the other departments or is planning commission is also involved in this whole cap planning?
Oh, definitely. So when we did the last cap, so the current one we have right now, the qualified cap we have right now, we worked with the commission doing a series of workshop with residents as part of a commission meeting, a study session, workshop, however you want to clarify it or quantify it. And the commission then reviewed the cap and recommended that cap for approval to the city council, which they did approve. So the cap basically works as a policy document and a process for approving is the same as adopting a general plan amendment or a specific plan amendment or a zoning ordinance amendment. The council is the final say on it.
Okay. And also, how about open space? Do we include them reviewing in our cap elements?
We certainly could include committees and commissions if you wanted to as part of our outreach, definitely. I mean, there's no, most of our policy documents, like the general plan, we have taken to the various committees to get their input because you get a different type of, our resident who's interested in open space may attend that meeting over attending a TAC meeting or something like that. So yeah, we certainly can include outreach to committees as part of our update.
Okay. One more last question. Do you think having a committee, sustainable committee will be complement for our planning department?
That's a council decision. At
Yeah,
that
but
point, yeah.
that is our decision, but I want to know your feedback. What do you think?
It's, citizen input is really great, and we see how committees do work with the city. The planning commission has done the job of adopting the cap in the past, and we do have our commission is qualified to continue to do that. It's a really difficult question for me to answer. We do have a lot of experts who testify during public comment that help assist the commission in rendering their decisions too, so.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sure either you or Scott would give. Can you talk a little bit about the workshop approach rather than a committee? Because I'm much more concerned about the possibility when you get to the decision making of doing a joint planning city council meeting, because I see a lot of the stuff changing so fast, like you're saying. I mean, to me, it's not so much what we would put in the cap as much as little things like the PM 2.5 reduction from no fireplaces and things like that. But go ahead.
I think it
Did you give it any time about that rather than a committee?
Well, we didn't study how many cities, like, for instance, ran workshops, but I can tell you, for instance, the city of Livermore went from having a Brown Act governed committee to essentially what we would now call a task force that is holding a series of workshops. It allowed them a lot of flexibility, and I believe, Mayor, that's really ultimately what you're kind of getting at is what is right for the city is what we're discussing tonight. Some cities that we surveyed found that a more nimble approach, having that flexibility mattered to them. Others liked the structure of a Brown Act governed committee. But the workshop, in short, allows you to have the conversation, elaborate on thoughts and perspectives. It's more of a community dialogue versus a structured agenda that must be governed by the Brown Act. So it's really what is right for this city. Workshop or committee or task force, which is short in nature, that's less of an impact on staff, right? So it's really comes down to ultimately what the council would like.
And Scott, if I can add to that, if you want to pull up the timeline, I believe the timeline that we showed with the workshop, yes, did not include, instead of a workshop, if you were to create a single purpose committee for reviewing the cap, we did not add in a time frame for advertising, interviews, and appointment by the council, or if it's a planning commission appointing it, that would add additional time, probably another 1 or 2 months. I don't say that as any kind of qualitative positive or negative. I just want to make sure that we are aware that adds a couple more months to the process.
And you're probably going to have to look at something like adding one of the trades in there too, which is what we've run into. The other questions or comments, or should we open?
No, I
public
think it would be helpful if Mark and I gave a report out of, sort of, would that be a good time to do that now? A report out of what we concluded? Do you want
Sure, why
to
not?
start?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mark.
Council comments?
Sure. You want me to do that?
Yeah, well, you can start and I'll
Okay.
give my report out afterwards.
I mean, this is actually the 8th meeting we've had on this issue. We started in July with deciding whether or not we wanted to put it on an agenda for a decision. And on August 8th, council decided to create this ad hoc committee. And with that, we said, okay, that ad hoc committee should determine what this climate or sustainability type committee should do. What's the deliverable? What's the charter? What's the work plan? That sort of thing. The makeup of the committee and the frequency of meetings and things like that. That was our charter as an ad hoc committee. We met on August 28th initially. As an ad hoc committee, we brainstormed some initial thoughts, and it kind of boiled down to, at that time, two focus areas that I took away from it: the involvement in the climate action plan process, and also some involvement in the grants process because of a lot of grant opportunities that are out there. We met again on October 18th. We further brainstormed and we came up with some questions for the city manager that we wanted answered. The city manager and deputy city manager came back to us on November 27th, laid out the results of basically the responses to our questions, talked about state and federal legal mandates, legal constraints, a review of San Ramon committees and commissions, outside agency actions and requirements, local agency survey, climate action planning update timeline, grant status, and city climate action plan measures. These are just sort of topic areas that the deputy city manager and city manager ran us through. We had another meeting on December 21st. That's where deputy city manager presented the survey of the cities in kind of a spreadsheet format. We went through that in detail. And then on January 10th, we had our basically the seventh meeting on this. It was a public ad hoc meeting as requested by the public. And frankly, my takeaway from that was an excellent dialogue that we had with the public. We went around the room. We had some follow-up questions, some back and forth dialogue. We answered some questions. City manager was addressed in a couple of questions and gave his feedback. We reviewed that spreadsheet. And there was a lot of calls, as had been previously by the public, a lot of calls for establishment of a commission. And you know, to me, you know, the words have meanings, right? And there was no specific recommendation in terms of delegation of council authority to a particular commission or something like that. You know, a commission, as was mentioned, is covered under our municipal code. And, you know, we got 5 things that are specifically covered in there: the Planning Commission, Architectural Review Board, Parks and Community Services Commission, Building Code Board of Appeals, and City Housing Authority. These are the things that are codified in our municipal code. So we would obviously have to update our municipal code if we were to go forth with a commission as requested by the public. The comments also focused on implementation of the climate action plan, not just participation in the development. Some speakers want to be able to advise the city council, advise staff, advise other committees, give recommended actions and policies, recommended resolutions. They also talked about promoting education on environmental issues. We had a speaker from El Cerrito that talked about their environmental quality commission and or committee, and a climate action plan stakeholder advisory group that they've got. Public comments wanted to talk about being involved in urban planning. They wanted to promote green transportation and business, mitigate the impacts of climate change, and kind of provide an answer to the question of where are all the residents in this process. I will say that we were split. Councilmember Ruby and I were split on kind of where we were going with all this. What was clear was that the public wanted to be involved in climate and sustainability related issues. It was also clear to me that we need to be more deliberate as a city to highlight a lot of the good things that we're doing in the city that many members of the public may not be aware of. already, and I, kind of highlighted some of the things in terms of how we're implementing a lot of the California codes, climate related codes already. We've got a rooftop solar in our municipal code. The whole idea of building out the city core and all the benefits of that and how it can benefit, has benefits for the environment. Our SB 1383, Solid Waste Fund, the ACI contract, how we're working to eliminate single use, dishes and utensils and things like that. Our trash-free San Ramon program. We've got city purchase requirements. We use MCE as a city provider. We use for our landscaping, we use kind of recycled water and have all the purple pipe. We're converting grass to drought tolerant landscaping. Going through a fleet electrification study. Have even purchased some electric vehicles already. We have
That electrification study is not electrification, but greenhouse gas reduction study on vehicles.
on vehicles. Yes, thank you. Streamlining electric vehicle charging process and permitting. We talked about the lead buildings that we have. This building is a LEED certified building. City Center is a LEED certified building, that sort of thing. Representation on the air district and MC boards. So that's, and on and on. Some of the things that we're doing already. Now, at that public ad hoc meeting, I spoke at that time of creating a limited duration, limited scope task force or working group to focus on the climate action plan. I was open to the possibility of considering something longer term and expanded scope, but I wanted to review that and look at that after the climate action planning process was complete and do an evaluation as far as value added of that process. I suggested the task force or working group consist of a small business representative, a landscape construction representative, a local advocate from one of the climate related groups, of a nonprofit, a student, an energy professional, and 2 at-large members of a task force or working group. Total of 7 people is what I'd come up with. I will say that after further reflection on this, what I'd said at that meeting was actually limiting in scope in terms of public participation. If we have 7 people who are identified to participate in that process, we actually limit the ability of other people to participate to some extent. That kind of a task force would be subject to the Brown Act, agendizing meetings, the formality of the meeting structure. And so I've since kind of changed my perspective in that rather than a specific task force focused on climate action plan, I am more of the mindset of, as we see up here, a workshop or 2 or whatever, but something that can have broad participation by climate advocates into the climate action planning process. Consultant can figure out how to do that, how to integrate it into the timeline, et cetera. But it would be less formal, not subject to all the Robert's Rules of Order and things like that to the same extent that a formal task force meeting might be. And as far as the grants thing, that was also mentioned early on for us. My preference is not that we have a committee or something that would be involved in grant identification, research, writing, things like that. I would prefer to have some kind of a centralized grants coordinator, grants researcher, grant writer, something centrally managed at the city level to look across all the staffs for grant opportunities, not just grants focused on climate, because there's a lot of stuff out there that we might be able to get our hands on. So that's kind of my summary of the different meetings that we had, my perspective on it, and kind of where I kind of initially came down at the public ad hoc meeting, and I've since kind of modified that because I think there's a better opportunity for a workshop, perhaps, where, you know, people can go have breakouts in different corners, work on specific things, come back, give feedback, and it's a more participatory forum than a specific 7-person task force. That's my recap.
Okay,
Crystal?
great.
That's the way you saw it?
Well, actually, Mark is correct. We initially both agreed that we thought a task force would actually be helpful to inform our climate action plan. And we also agreed on the membership who that would constitute. We talked about that even before the public hearing. We had which we also made known to our staff, just some of the considerations and things that we wanted to, you know, kind of aim for out of this committee, commission, what have you. You know, kind of identifying, like, as was mentioned, we also thought about having maybe one alternate. One of the things I mentioned with regard to the youth is the youth cares very much about environmental issues. If anything, they're the ones who are going to be most impacted by any delays that we cause. And so I think personally, this is not only a great opportunity to have their voice, but really to give them a professional opportunity and opportunity in terms of, we could create internships, opportunities where they could have professional development and have a voice at the table, similar to what we do with Teen Council, but this is focused specifically on climate initiatives. I think the other thing that was, you know, I shared with staff was some of the things that I found that were being done in one of the city, Ann Arbor, Michigan, because I really thought they had a very good kind of layout of what are the benefits of a city-based environmental committees or commissions, and with some of those benefits, including promoting environmental awareness, encouraging public participation, facilitating the implementation of environmental policies. They can also help with identifying environmental issues, developing strategies. They can provide a platform for community members to voice their concerns and make recommendations to local government officials. And then it also said, mentioned citizen advisory boards. For example, what would it consist of? Like we mentioned, a group of stakeholders from a particular community appointed to provide comments and advice on a project or issue. In this case, we talked about CAP, but also on an ongoing basis. Climate crisis is not a static one-time issue. And one of the things I made a point about, what is the point, you know, why is it first of all, the difference between having just a bunch of people come into a room rather than having a very carefully thought out select group of representative people misses the point. The point was to get these specific stakeholders at the table at one time, something we have never done, which would have been really helpful before we even started really updating this climate action plan. And I think that, you know, it's really a missed opportunity over and over again when we talk about the open space. You know, while it's great that, of course, we can have liaisons from other committees join other commissions or committees in their meetings, but, you know, what if we had a committee already? They probably would have thought about that already on our behalf and brought it to our attention a while ago. So these are the kinds of examples, you know, of missed opportunities. And as our staff members so graciously explained to us, that what set the planning commission back was that the state mandate on the housing element. But if we had a climate committee, guess what? They would have been already working on that for us to help make it easier for our planning commission to pick up on that right after. And because, you know, originally this was something I know they were trying to do much sooner. It hasn't been updated since 2011. And so, you know, talking about a 2-month delay is very minor. And the other thing is that, let's see, city boards and commissions also make another value here is that they make periodic public reports, recommendations to the city council and the city administrators in ways to improve the city government programs and ordinances on energy or environmental topics. City-based environmental committees or commissions can be an effective way to provide environmental sustainability, engage the community environmental decision-making process. And I think when we're relying on their tax dollars and they want to have a say, I think we should create space for them. The other thing is, this is the most really important part. They can play a very important role in making sure that we are actually meeting our climate action plan goals in a timely manner, and also look at options for implementation and look at opportunities where we can offset costs. Things that our staff cannot do in a random day. This would be a committee that would meet on a regular basis, and a group of targeted, carefully selected stakeholders would work to think about how we can do things most efficiently and effectively and make sure that we are executing and delivering on our climate action plan. And I can tell you that at the public meeting, you know, I did ask, you know, how many of those goals, what percentage of goals, or would you say more or less have we met? We can't actually, you know, that wasn't able to be really stated, just most of it was the answer. And so when we can't even tell off the top of our head what we've done and haven't done and where we're behind or not behind, that tells me that there's lacking clarity on where we actually stand. And so this is about really being more intentional about our goals. And this is not, you know, we talked, I think our city manager explained to us a while ago that if it was a committee, we're talking about maybe $20,000 a year. $20,000 that I'm pretty sure with a group of very smart, competent residents who would be leading this committee or commission could offset, well, the committee specifically in this case, 20,000 would easily offset that with any grant that could come down the pipeline. And as I mentioned, for me, the difference here was if we go through all the trouble of interviewing candidates, forming a task force to help with initially with the cap so that we can get that moving quicker sooner than later. Why would we just disband all of that work right after that? That doesn't make sense to me. The community has stepped forward asking, this has been happening for 3 years now. They've been asking to want to have a voice in this matter. They want a committee at minimum. And, you know, I understand your opinion, but that's not the will of the community. And so, you know, why not take that opportunity, take that task force and get them to work on really sort of fleshing out some of the details to get us in that really refining what that committee will look like. Because at the end of the day, all this fears of we don't know what this, what that, at the end of the day, it comes back to the council. We approve it. So whatever roles and responsibilities are out there, we're going to approve it. It's not like it's just going to happen because somebody said so. So, and as far as like the trades, do we have a trades representative? I think we all know we have know someone in the trades. There's many people that we could bring in relatively easily. And so, and, you know, I know that the open space, you know, could definitely use some support. You know, they have a lot on their hands. It's one of the busiest committees that we have out there, and they really could use some support on the environmental side. And so my recommendation is that we go ahead with forming a task force. We interview some very qualified candidates that would be meeting, as was mentioned earlier, having someone from business, youth, climate, environmental, nonprofit, 2 members at large from the community, energy industry, and construction and landscape, and possibly thinking maybe of 1 or 2 alternates in the event that we might lose, you know, someone here or there, and they can fill in the spot without requiring us to do, you know, go back and do interviews again. And after we have that task force, inform the climate action plan, and then have that task them with the responsibility to help shape and outline the roles and responsibilities and the mission of a committee and or commission. And our commitment to them is that we will commit to get to one or the other. We're not stating which one right now. That will be decided when all those options are clearly outlined to the council, and we will decide whether it's a committee or commission, given the information and the work that the task force has done. That's my recommendation. Thank you.
Any other discussion before we open to public comment? Go ahead.
No, public comment.
Okay, let's open the public comment. Do we have any cards?
I have 6 speaker cards for this item, and we did receive 7 written public comments before the
Okay.
meeting. The first is Wei Tai Kwok.
Good evening, Council. My name's Wei Tai Kwok. I'm the Vice Mayor of the City of Lafayette, speaking on behalf of myself today. I'm here to share Lafayette's experience in establishing our environmental task force back in 2006. First of all, this has been a great conversation. I salute you for all the hard work that you've done to look into this item tonight. And I feel your pain and I feel what you're going through. It's all sound very familiar. I'm not here to tell you what to do or how to do it because all cities are very different. But I do hope that I'll encourage you to jump in the pool and join us. And we're here to share our experiences with you. But going back in history, in 2006, our environmental task force also focused on a CAP, which we called our Environmental Action Plan. It was not a committee, it was not a commission, it was a task force intended to be short-term. But 17 years later, it's still there. And so it has actually become committee status within our city over the years. After we completed that CAP, we turned to a number of other important items. One, in 2016, our ETF led the way to join MCE as our community choice aggregator. In 2022, that group researched and drafted our ordinance for EV charging for multifamily new construction. Given the housing element, we wanted to ensure in Lafayette that 100% of our renters and condo owners also had equitable access to EV charging in the future. Very proud of that, compared to 40% state requirements for EV charging. This year, our big initiative is in transitioning gas to electric leaf blowers. After 4 years of research where this body went and talked to the people of Piedmont, Southern California, Palo Alto to find out the best practices in leaf blower work, they drafted an ordinance which is effective this coming July 1st, and they're leading our effort for public outreach and education at this point. Today, our ETF has 7 members, 1 staffer, 2 city council liaisons. They meet monthly. The staffer spends about 10% of her time, that's 16 hours a month, staffing this council committee, and then a budget of $0 to $10,000 a year, historically speaking. I'll summarize with our top 3 learnings. Number 1, commitment. We found that in the successful years is when the city council, when staff and the volunteers are all aligned to work on this. And we have not always had that alignment. And so those years we've had frustration. Number 2, appoint capable volunteers. You've already talked about this, but we have found that it's important to invite a cross-section of people with legal and policy backgrounds, technical backgrounds, and communication and outreach skills. That makes the best type of committee. And finally, we've learned more to focus on action rather than planning. In the early years, we did a lot of planning. Now we try to write ordinance. We want to have results. We want to deliver action. So in summary, I encourage you to jump into the pool and join us. I look forward to the regional cooperation between city of Contra Costa County cities. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Larry Brickle.
Thank you, City Council members and staff. As a concerned member of this community, I believe it's crucial for us to have an obligation to ensure that the public is actively involved in this decision-making process to establish a sustainability committee, commission, or task force. During the public meeting of the ad hoc committee, it was expressed that there is uncertainty about the direction we should take regarding a sustainability commission. 2 key takeaways were highlighted. Firstly, the positive impact of public input And secondly, the importance of continuing to involve the community in the decision-making process. The city council can clearly set and approve guidelines for the mission, priorities, ongoing tasks, and monitoring to assist city staff and other committees. These entities, I would imagine, would be grateful for the help. As we navigate through the climate action plan process, it is evident that public input will play a pivotal role in shaping the outcomes. Councilmember Armstrong suggested that depending on the progress of the CAP process, decisions about subsequent steps could be made later. This sounds like kicking the can down the road and a disregard for what is clearly a desire from the community to support a sustainability commission or committee. With 98% of the room filled on the 1/10/24 meeting, it was evident the residents of San Ramon are interested in local government having a role in a more cohesive and assertive stance on sustainability issues. The consideration of establishing a committee was mentioned as a potential value-added component to this process by the ad hoc attendees. Councilmember Armstrong's valuable perspective is influenced by his military background, where the approach is to start a task and complete it. Similarly, my wife's career in the ICU as a nurse also revolved around tasks, including those on a 15-minute or hourly basis. However, in managing a patient, overseeing a complex system like climate, there are ongoing issues that require continuous management and ongoing management. This is precisely what a sustainability committee or commission would be adept at addressing, both immediate tasks and the ongoing challenges and changes as they are presented. We must make sure that the focus is maintaining and monitoring the CAP after it is completed and monitoring the CAP after it's completed. The CAP isn't just a plan that gathers dust on a shelf or offloaded onto a hard drive, never to be seen again. I'd like to recognize Councilmember Armstrong's concerns about the inactivity and diminished direction in existing committees. However, associating a new sustainability commission,
We need you to wrap up, please.
very quickly, one more paragraph, with these groups is like tossing the baby out with the bathwater. One more short paragraph.
No,
In
no,
conclu-
no, I'm sorry. There's a 3-minute limit on this thing.
Okay, thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Luz Gomez.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff, and fellow residents. My name is Luz Gomez, a 44-year resident of San Ramon. I'm the current chair of the county's Sustainability Commission, but today I'm speaking here as a resident of San Ramon. Climate change, global warming, extreme weather, climate refugees, adaptation, resilience hubs, urban heat islands. These terms and many others have become part of our lexicon. The climate emergency has become ever present. Yet there seems to be a disconnect between what the city hopes to achieve with regards to climate change and what your residents would like to see. How do we know if San Ramon is doing all it can to become a more sustainable city? Tonight, you are discussing the possibility of forming a climate action committee or commission, some type of advisory body that can help the city address the ever-changing and growing concerns raised by our changing climate and atmosphere. Some might say that these are global or regional issues, but much of the work that lies ahead falls squarely on the shoulders of local jurisdictions, much of it through unfunded state and federal mandates. Some consider spending precious general fund dollars on yet another advisory body to be a waste of resources. I would argue that the city needs to invest in the highest priority topics and perhaps reconsider whether other advisory bodies need to continue to exist, or perhaps meet less frequently so that you can invest in this very important topic in the moment when we're so needed. Some may say that we need to take small steps and first create a limited time opportunity for public participation while the city updates its outdated climate action plan. I agree, and many of our fellow residents would agree as well, that we need that participation. But only creating a short time duration task force or working group, or even a workshop, which is at a minimum what I would expect the city to have us participate on, will not ensure ongoing engagement of our residents on a topic that's not likely to go away anytime soon. While the city has made great strides with many sustainable practices, it's also true that there are many opportunities to go much further. I urge the council to commit to forming a climate action advisory body, committee, or commission as soon as possible. We heard today what some of the topics that such a commission could cover, from tracking implementation of the CAP to perhaps tracking emerging issues and grant opportunities, and it can help educate the public and so on and so forth. But let's not this opportunity slip away. Let's commit to forming a body. If the council decides to create a short-term fact-focused group first, let's have that body recommend the desired composition, goals, and charter of the Climate Action Committee or Commission.
Need to wrap up, please.
Collaboration, that's what this time is calling for. And your residents have shown that they are eager and ready to collaborate with you. You are not alone. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Jamin Purcell.
Hello, my name is James Purcell. I'm from the city of Richmond. I'm an environmentalist who sits on a number of local advocacy organizations, and I'm a member of a county commission, the hazardous material, because the sustainability was full. San Ramon is just over 40 years old, actually about the same as old as I am when it incorporated. And its climate plan is just over a decade old. That is almost more than a quarter of its life. Now, some of the concerns that I heard when I was listening to the comments was that there was the costs. People were really worried. But, honestly, it's about lights, walls, printing, perhaps some staff. I could say I'm not really trying to put city staff or any of the contractors out of work, but bringing in experts for free is going to cost next to nothing. And you have experts all over the community. Experts who can speak to development of green works plans, moving forward and being able to make sure that when your trees are dying, that there's a plan to be able to replace them. Those are important because when we're talking about trees, it's not just beautification, it's also speaking to bringing down the temperature of the city. I understand that it was 107.1 degrees last year. I know that that sounds miserable, but it's just going to get worse. As well, when we talk about how we're going to be saving money, we can talk about all of the grants. Every year, the EPA gives out $4 billion in grants to organizations that are nonprofits as well to municipalities. Green infrastructure, water conservation, electrification, but youth education as well. Environmentalists aren't born. They have to be grown. They have to be fostered. You have to give somebody an appreciation for nature, for the environment they live in, for them to truly appreciate it when they get older and to make sure that they're custodians in the future. This Sustainability Commission isn't just for the people right now, but it's for San Ramon's future, for the people who have not yet been born. And as well, a body like this, not only when it develops a work plan, doesn't just give the city of San Ramon a direction of where it's going, but also helps alleviate the insecurity of the climate crisis. Now, at the end of it, it really comes back to the community. Community engagement about the things you were speaking about, the positive things that you guys are doing, a LEED certified building. But that's just the beginning. There's many, many more things that could be done. And the best way to do that is pull money down from above to do it.
Jim.
I will. Well, let me just close out with a quote from Teddy Roosevelt, an environmentalist and who admires sustainability. Here in the United States, we turn our rivers and streams into sewers and dumping grounds. We pollute the air. We destroy the forest. We exterminate fish, birds, and mammals. Not to speak of the vulgarizing, charming landscapes with hideous advertisements. But at last, it looks like our people are awakening.
Thank you, Jim. Next speaker, please.
Linda DeChambeau.
I am Linda DeChambeau with Contra Costa Climate Leaders. I want to thank you for this important item before you. As noted earlier, my biggest concern I mentioned under general comment is this really hasn't had a proper public hearing. without a sunshine ordinance, I do understand there were ad hoc meetings. There was a meeting that was open to the public, but it wasn't noticed to the public. And I wasn't able to attend, nor were a number of other people, nor were a number of your residents. I think it's important to remember that a petition has been provided before you for over 100 residents who have asked for action on this item. There were youths that sat in front of their San Ramon City Hall collecting signatures, going to the farmer's market. You know, this is the most important issue of our time. The UN says that the shifting weather patterns is the most important thing that we can look at. The risk of catastrophic flooding, the impacts of climate change are in global scope that are unprecedented in scale and threatens all of humankind. This crisis is going to be important. Just this morning, the city of San Diego declared another climate emergency. We're probably next. This is not going away. The youth are sitting out, the people are sitting out, the people are asking for this. I think you're very lucky that you have these members in your community that have asked for this ad hoc committee that took the time to do this. So give it the time that it deserves, and I ask you to bring it back on a full, proper agenda. The survey this evening was interesting, but none of us had seen it before. Nothing was posted, no staff reports, no minutes, no nothing. I heard that your own open space committee showed up at that meeting asking for this type of meeting. I think that's interesting for the public to know. I heard members of your chamber came asking for this. That's important to know. The Biden administration has just reinforced under the a new climate corps, AmeriCorps, to create new jobs. We've got the infrastructure IRA funding money coming. There are grants. I'm a former member at the US EPA. There's going to be a great opportunity for this, and you have so many people and so many experts in your community that could serve on this committee and get you those monies and put you front and forefront. The survey was interested, but our nonprofit does also have links to a number of other climate action surveys, as you heard tonight, and I understand at this meeting that there's no minutes for. Other members spoke, El Cerrito spoke. A lot of cities have a dedicated full-time FTE, a sustainability director. This is actually an easy way out for San Ramon. I just want to mention too that this was begun in 2007. Our organization had a grant under the San Francisco Foundation. And in 2007, you did get your first greenhouse gas inventory and you did get your first climate action plan. It was ratified by the council in 2011. Here we are in 2024. We've got a lot going on, a lot of money, a lot of opportunity. It's not just what's mandated under development, but there are great opportunities for you to make money, to get energy efficiency. Even in my small town of Moraga, where I was a former mayor, we have saved tons of money just from looking at green water. So I just suggest that you bring this back and look at a charter and give this a full public hearing.
Thank you, Linda. Next speaker, please.
Heidi Keniston Lee.
Okay. First, I wanted to say, having represented the chamber at the ad hoc's public forum, I really thought it was amazing how positive and productive and respectful the conversation was. That was a real takeaway for me. So I love that we can consider this issue in that spirit. And in the spirit of collaboration that the Chamber of Commerce asked, should the city council decide to launch a sustainability task force, a committee, a commission, or even a workshop, it's important that we ensure that the business community is represented on that body in order to ensure that all aspects of climate and environmental matters are considered, including economic impacts on climate programs and policy. I do want to thank Councilmember Armstrong for mentioning representation of small business. That's really important. I did a search on the internet. There are so many companies that have sustainability managers who sort of might bring that perspective of business and economics to the table. So very important that our business community has a voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Bob Peoples.
Good evening. I'm Bob Peoples, a resident of San Ramon. Thank you for exploring the establishment of a sustainability entity for the city. I strongly support such an entity. We are experiencing major shifts in our weather, in addition to significant social and economic changes. It's very prudent for the city to acknowledge those changes and begin to take steps to enhance the resilience of the city, its residents, and businesses located here, so that we can respond and adapt in a more timely and effective manner. The updating the CAP, the Climate Action Plan, is an appropriate initial focus of these efforts, and I think long overdue. However, the issues are broader than just reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The entity created should be permanent and not sunset when the CAP is updated. The issues of concern will continue to evolve, and additional issues will emerge that need to be addressed. And this is going to require, ongoing attention from the city and its residents. I want to just point out in response to your discussion that a task force or a committee, if it's established, could sponsor and participate in workshops. I also would suggest that you consider establishing at least a sustainability coordinator position in the city to provide a focal point for cities in the city staff to oversee, facilitate, monitor, or whatever role might be appropriate for that kind of a person on the staff. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Next speaker, please.
Jan LeBond.
Good evening, Mayor and fellow council members. My name is Jan LeBond, 9-year resident here in San Ramon, and 15-year resident in Danville before that. I wanted to echo some of what Mr. Peoples just said, and that strongly urge the council to make this a permanent, ongoing entity and not just a temporary task force, one and done sort of thing. Not just because the climate action plan and climate change are big issues and that thing, but there are ongoing issues beyond just emissions. There has to do with, freshwater use, pollution, protection of watersheds, waste, food waste, many other items. So having a sustainability entity, whatever it's commission or, coalition, committee, call it what you will, but I strongly encourage you to approve this kind of entity, and with encourage, strong public participation in that. I think you'll find a sea of volunteers and committed citizens who realize the importance of this and love our land and will want to help. And I think that the outline of the group with 7 people that had at least 2 kind of free agents or whatever from the community sounds like a good structure. I just hope it can be approved, and whatever minor amount of funding it takes to sustain that is approved. And I think you'll find there's a lot of interest from the community that can help out. It won't just be up to those 7 people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
That was the last speaker card.
Okay, we'll close the public comment. The matters before the council.
I can start.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Armstrong and Rubio, for your amazing work exploring our city current approach on sustainability and climate change mitigation. Thanks for highlighting all the good work that our city did and continuing to do as part of our climate action plan, which shows that we are already leaders in climate action plan. And thanks to all public speakers for joining us, sharing your comments and your feedback. We appreciate, because it's a weekday, still you're here and helping us in chalking out all this, exploring the options. So as part of, from me, as we are already leaders in climate action plan. So it is essential for us to continue to be leaders, and it is essential for us to address climate change challenges that outline strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, enhance energy efficiency, and improve resilience to climate impacts. A CAP brings economic benefits, improves public health, and helps us meet regulatory requirements. It involves community engagement. That's the one which we are keep mentioning all the day, right? About the importance of community engagement. And also it fosters long-term planning and positions us as a leaders in sustainability approaches. Overall, definitely a CAP is a roadmap for us to combat climate change and achieve sustainable resilience future for us. Now, coming to whether we want to go with the committee or task force or commission, right? So for me, I think committees are suitable for ongoing multifaceted efforts, especially in this case, there are, from the feedback that I heard, there are multiple organizations within our city need to be participating, right? Like planning department, public commission or planning commission, parks and community services, city council, public engagement. There are a lot of stakeholders that will be involved in this whole process. And we need to have a comprehensive approach and coordination within existing departments. So I think in order to make sure that we need to create a policy development and so that we can bring all the stakeholders and have a public engagement, I think committee makes more sense for me, because for me, the task force is only to be given a task, they complete the task, they are done. But whereas we want to have a long-term plan. And as Vice Mayor from Lafayette mentioned, they started around 15 or 17 years as a task force, but they still continuing. It's great to know that you are able to sustain your task force for that long time. And that means that definitely we need, I'm sure it will continue for furthermore, many more years, right? So we need to have something, a body which can create all these policies and focus on building a future for our climate action plan. That's what I'm looking for. With that, keeping in that in my mind, I would definitely go, and actually I would like to move a motion to form a sustainability committee.
I will
you.
second that.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, I have a question of the city manager and or the deputy city manager. The workshop that was mentioned, was that posted publicly?
Yes, we posted it on all of our normal channels for public meetings. So it was posted on Facebook, all of our social media channels. We sent it out to our email list that we normally do for public meetings. That's about 7,000 people. And I believe we posted it on the front door of City Hall. So we treated it as a normal city meeting in terms of our posting and notification.
Was the view graphs associated with tonight's meeting made available to the public before the meeting?
That was in the packet for the meeting tonight, the presentation and the staff report.
So the information was available to the public before the workshop and before this council meeting?
Before the council meeting, yes. At the workshop, that's where we presented the presentation for the first time to the
That
public.
was a public meeting, met Brown Act requirements and everything else. Okay, thank you very much. I would like to see, and I know we have a motion in a second. Actually, we don't have a, we have a second.
Marisol,
not a
put the
motion.
second on it.
Go ahead. Any case, I'm more inclined to go with the task force that has two functions and you can give a task force more than one. You don't have to limit it to just one. That would support the preparation of the climate action plan. And then subsequent to that would provide a recommendation on a subsequent sustainability entity, including what would the charter for that organization be, for that entity. If we want to do a committee now, it would take a substantial amount of time for us to create that charter. And we would have to create the charter before we actually interview for the committee and appoint the committee and then proceed. So I believe that it's more timely and yet would still meet the functions of the needs of the city and would address the opportunities for the participation would be to have a task force. The task force would be would have their meetings and could have workshops that could include large audiences and conversation associated with large audiences. And at the conclusion of the climate action plan activities, then they would meet and make a recommendation on the elements of a committee charter.
Councilmember Perkins, or Vice Mayor, excuse me, this is sounding like a substitute motion. Is that your intent?
We just want to
Well,
wait it out, let it.
Well, we can vote on the current motion, and then if it passes, it passes, and that's that. And if it doesn't, then I will present an alternate motion after the fact.
I've got some comments, Mark, unless you want to go.
But yeah, I actually had a question for the city manager. We did have in the training room where we had our ad hoc public meeting, a good turnout there. We've heard comment about a petition of 100 people, et cetera. 7 or 8 speakers tonight, got some written comments. I do remember when I was preparing for the State of the City address last year, we used as a basis for kind of developing the kind of the talking points of that, the results of the community survey that we did. Where did environmental issues stack up in terms of the community saying this is a significant issue for the city?
If you will give me a moment, this is a hold please moment. I need to pull up. I do have, you're referring to our City of San Ramon Community Survey that we conducted in March of 2023. We did, let me scroll through here.
That was, we had a research firm.
We did have one general question. Let me look here. That asked, what is the most serious problem facing the residents of San Ramon that you would like the government to do something about? And so, yeah, we had that question, and the top 3 were growth and development, too much, at 31%, crime and safety at 24%, and traffic and congestion at 15%.
Do you have any of the other, where did environment stack up on?
I can, reading through it, housing costs, lack of affordable housing was next. Growth and development, not enough, was 6%. Jobs and economy, 6%. Public transportation, 4%. Government waste and mismanagement, 3%. Taxes too high, 2%. And then we have an other category and a none. So there weren't any specific environmental concerns listed. That's just a cursory review of that question.
That was a community survey, statistically significant survey. So, but we have heard public tonight. So, but I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
And I would also add, actually, interesting question, because, traffic management and growth and development are part of the environmental management issues. There's a few things you actually mentioned, including affordable housing there. So I think that's the complexity of this issue. It deals with so many things, and how wonderful it would be to have all these stakeholders in one room meeting on a regular basis to really flesh out some of these issues in a capacity that we cannot do right now because we don't have that happening. We can't possibly do that. And I think the main point here is closing loopholes. We identified how they can help with implementation in a timely manner, staying on task, meeting our climate action plan goals. We can't even identify that right now. If we had a group, if we had a committee, they would be able to tell us that. And so it's about being more intentional about what we do and also understanding that this is a self-sustaining committee. It pays itself off. It's not like we're going to end up paying any really for them to be there. This is skills and talents that are going to that the community has, and they want to be part of this. And I just think it's there's not one single negative thing to having the committee, not one single negative thing.
Well, if I can get in here, I'll give you one.
It's hold on, let me finish what I'm saying. And so, you know, I just think it's hard to reason. And even if there is one, there's so many more positives that outnumber the one. Thank you.
I think that the way to go on this thing is a workshop at a joint planning city council meeting, because it's our responsibility. And there's so many things coming down the pike, like you said, and people need to know we are still held to certain legislation that I haven't heard one word about. It isn't climate change, it's the global warming solution. It's Senate Bill 375 for the Sustainable Community Strategy. People need to understand when you start saying we got to do this for climate change, you are talking about more housing. And if that's the trade-off you want, so be it. But these are the rules. We can't make up our own rules. These are, you can read these for yourself. That's what's out there. It's not just this by 2040, we have to be electric vehicles, because it isn't. It's renewable energy. It's the green hydrogen that Chevron's doing. So are we now going to support Chevron, have them on this task force? Because they're moving towards this more than anyway. PG&E is going to be under the gun when you do away with gas appliances, which the state is trying to do. So I won't support this, but I will go for a workshop and let's vote and we'll see where it
1
goes.
minute, I want to follow up on this one. So as I agree that you mentioned that it is our responsibility. Now we are saying that it is our responsibility to make sure, but then we are transferring that work to someone to have a workshop, someone to have a task force. Instead of we as a council not able to make the decision, you want to transfer that to some task force to make the decision, which is very critical for our city and for our future of our future generations. That's what I'm hearing in the council bench, that we don't want to take any decision. Let's transfer it to some task force, create a team task force. We are the one who are representing our community, not the task force, not the people who are going to be created in that workshop.
No, the workshop.
So
is to
I think it
teach
is our responsibility.
And I would like to add there's something about asking about the survey. You know, here's the thing, surveys, the community is not always abreast to all of the information when it comes in. You're asked a question. Are you satisfied? If we had actually asked specifically a question, are you satisfied with our climate initiatives? They may not actually know what's actually fully available to them. And that is another role that a committee could do for the communities, provide that information and really put it out there for them to decide, hey, you know, I'd like to see that in my city. And I'd like to see my tax dollars go towards these initiatives. So I think we have to be careful when we look at surveys, you know, how we interpret that. It's very limited in scope. Even the people who do respond is a confounding factor. And I think, you know, the other thing here is this ask for a committee has gone through more vetting than any of our other committees that I know of. And city manager, if you please inform me if I'm incorrect, how many other committees have gone through this much vetting?
Well, that depends on the process. I am familiar with the ITAC formation. And that was a process where we did have a suggested goals and responsibilities of a committee presented to us by the sponsoring council member. So that is one of the things that staff needs. It's a critical item. We do need direction. We could be told to form a committee, but we also need to have the basics of that committee in order to implement the work to get that committee going. So it depends on what information we receive to form committees.
And if we were to approve a committee tonight, could a council member or two be appointed to be liaisons to help create that charter?
The council can do what they wish in order, in whatever manner to form the committee. So we would ask if there is a committee formed tonight, that we do receive some guidance on what a charter would look like. If we don't receive that guidance, we either need to come back to the council to get that specific guidance, or I'd have to think of another way of proposing that. But that has been staff, of course, we are here to implement the majority of the council's decisions. We are always happy when it's 5-0. But you know, we get 3 nodding heads in any situation, and then it's our task to figure out how to implement it. So whatever information we need to implement the council's direction, I'll make sure that we get that clarification, even if it's bring it back to another council meeting. So
To define the charter, correct?
yeah, each committee and council, or each committee formation goes through a different process depending on the situation. And this has been one of the longer periods with the formation of an ad hoc committee and all of the great discussion tonight, plus at the public meeting. Staff has taken a lot out of this process, and there are things that we can do. But that's the long answer to the question. It's not a yes or no.
Thank you so much.
For
I
the
really
record,
appreciate
open
your
space and
feedback.
Housing came with a vote of people as part of our when we did that vote.
And before we turn to a vote, I just want to add something on a very personal note. I have a daughter, so who most of you do know by now, but some of you may not, who is a brain cancer survivor who was diagnosed with brain cancer at just 13 months old. Why does that matter to me? Because I often have thought to myself, as a perfectly healthy mother, why my daughter had cancer so young in life, early in life. And we all know, if you've ever studied cancer, how cancer happens and unfolds, which I have, because I do have a molecular cell biology background. It happens by chronic, constant exposure. It's an accumulation of exposures that eventually damage your chromosomal DNA and cause cancer. And and it gets through checkpoints in your cells. I could get very molecular here with you, and eventually unfolds into what it is. And so what we are deciding about tonight is not just some positioning and political posturing. We are deciding the fate of our community, especially of our young people. And I think it's shameful that we won't have the courage to stand up for them and to fight for them. They're out there fighting every single day for their own lives right now, because we don't have adults doing what they're supposed to be doing today. Thank you.
But I have to tell you that I have a meeting upstairs, twice a month, that if you want to come to some Bay Area Air Quality Management District. And right now, the big thing for what we're talking about as far as isn't CO2 or even methane. It's particulate matter from fireplaces. Number 1 cause of health effect in the air. Number 2 cause of climate change. So I mean, that's why you need the workshop. People need to get information to do some of the things that you're talking about. Not just people in a committee, us, we're the ones making the decisions.
So we need a workshop to learn about the climate change action,
To tell people.
to tell people that there is a climate change
If you
happening.
care about it, come to the meetings and learn. I guess I should leave that on if I'm going to talk, but
I
go
think
ahead.
that education is gone. It's a time to take action rather than talking. That those days are gone.
Okay, well, there's a vote
Yeah.
here, so go ahead. You have a motion and a second.
Mark, you gonna vote?
I've already, stated my position earlier, so.
Have you voted?
Oh,
Okay, then.
well, hold on. How do I change my vote? How do I change?
City clerk?
I hit,
I changed it
say again?
to no.
She changed it for you, is what she's saying.
Okay, all right.
You're good with it? Okay, let's end it.
So I move that we establish a task force that works with the planning commission on creating and completing the climate action plan. And at the conclusion of that they develop a recommendation on a charter for an ongoing committee.
I'll second that.
And before we vote, I just want to clarify, Vice Mayor Perkins, our are we making a commitment in this vote that we will, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry, I want
Go
to
ahead.
finish. That we are making a commitment that we will basically empower them with, basically assign to them the responsibility of helping to charter a committee or a commission, but more likely a committee here. But with the commitment that we're going to have the committee so that they know they're working towards something and not something that in 4, 5 months, 6 months from now, they've done all this work and someone's going to just shoot them down and say, nope, thanks so much. We're not doing anything.
I expect that task force will make a recommendation to this council. It is up to this council to decide whether it's an ongoing activity or that's the end of the activity. This council we could shut down the Arts Advisory Committee next month if we chose. This council can do what it wants in terms of the governance of boards, committees, and commissions. So my motion is to establish a task force to support the Planning Commission and work on the climate action plan. And at the conclusion of the climate action plan activities, that this task force create a recommended charter for an ongoing committee.
And Vice
Just
Mayor
to
Perkins?
clarify, you're talking about forming a task force to include announcements,
Yes.
interview process, selection.
That would conduct workshops for the community participation in a climate action plan reviews.
Because to me, a workshop would be something that would be open to a greater number of people than just a 7-person task force.
Well, the task force.
That's incorrect because people can always show up to a meeting. The public's always welcome to show up and speak.
The task force can support a workshop and listen to the input and have discussions with the community in a workshop. It isn't strictly limited to a 3-minute public comment.
The task force with the recommendation originally that Councilmember Armstrong had agreed with me. I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're proposing, Vice Mayor Perkins. He had agreed along with me that we felt it was a good idea, which he changed his mind in the last few days. He had agreed that we could have a task force that would help inform the climate action plan and make recommendations to the climate action plan, which of course would be referred over to the planning commission, et cetera, right? So
Correct.
is that part so far correct? Am I
Correct.
understanding that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
good.
just to clarify, your position was to form a commission.
No,
Well,
my
my position was
commission,
for a
my
task force.
recommendation was that we make a recommendation for the first part of what Vice Mayor Perkins has just said. The second part of that is that we designate them with the responsibility of what Vice Mayor Perkins is saying is chartering the committee or commission, what have you, it could be one or the other, but the point is we task them with that and they will bring back a proposal for us to consider of the mission, the roles and responsibilities, which will go through us for approval. And the thing is, that was what I had proposed in the first place. And so,
I was referencing the ad hoc meeting.
that's what I said at the ad hoc meeting.
Okay, I heard it differently.
It's okay, but that is what I said. That is what I was.
What is the
referring.
difference between the task force and the committee that we are talking about?
The task force we haven't established, a committee would have a whole list of charter things. Education, grant investigations, activities for the community to participate in. There was a dozen or more opportunities for a committee to have. And rather than develop that charter today,
So
I want to kick that can down the road a little bit. And I recognize that's what it does, but it gives a group of people who have an interest, an opportunity to create that charter.
isn't the same thing we do with the committee?
Well,
No, a task force is
no, a task
very
force, I'm giving them
focused.
2 tasks.
No, see,
Focused
here,
entity with a.
here we are doing the
duration.
same repetitive work. That's all we are doing. Okay. We are selecting the task force. Again, we go through the interviews and all that.
Right?
We get the task force. Again, they will work with our city staff and
Yes.
then they build the charter. And then they'll come out with the plan, recommendations and all that. The
Yes.
same thing, you have a committee, it is already going to start that work rather than having a duplicate work. Again, you have to come back and you need to do interviews for that committee. You have to go through all this process.
Not necessarily.
Uh,
At the
uh,
end of the task force, if they develop a recommended charter, the council could appoint them as the members of the committee without a whole series of it also gives those members of that task force the opportunity to say, I signed up for a task force and I knew it would only last for 6-7 months. And I thank you very much for that opportunity, and I'll give up my position and you can appoint somebody in my place. But
that can be done even with the committee.
it could, it absolutely
Right,
could.
right.
But if you do a committee, then I want to see the entire charter of that committee before I vote.
Right.
I will not vote to establish a committee until I see their charter.
Of course, even with the task
But
force,
I will vote to establish a task force that has 2 tasks.
okay, so anyway, so here what I'm saying is we are just delaying the process.
Okay,
We are delaying the process, same achievement that we are going to achieve, but in the end, we are duplicating our,
I don't see any
Resources.
duplication. I really don't.
Vice
I
Mayor
don't
Perkins?
disagree with the lake that you recognize, but I do disagree that there is a duplication.
Vice Mayor Perkins, I just want to make sure I'm getting my question answered clearly. So I understand the 2 duties that you're outlining, but say the task force comes back, they've done the charter, they're going to revise it and refine it to our approval, right? What we're satisfied with. But the decision to enable them to form a committee, are we voting on that? Right
No,
now.
we're voting on establishing a task force that will recommend elements of a charter.
Okay, and so how many months are we so can you give us a
I'm not gonna
timeline?
give you-
No. I just want to get a sense so we can have more or less a timeline. It doesn't have to be like fixed. We understand there's flexibility. But to form, if we have to put a 30-day notice, right? That we have a task force and then we have to go through an interview process, right? Can you give me a little bit of that timeline and what that would look like?
Okay, before we get into that, we've got a motion on the
Yeah,
so
okay.
far.
And a second,
Do we have a second?
yes.
We had, okay, so we have a second from the minute.
Yes.
Okay, so, okay,
So-
then please continue the discussion.
Okay, so the only
wanted to make
concern,
sure.
we can come back to that. Okay, so the only concern I have, Vice Mayor Perkins, is if we shut these people down 7 months later and tell them, thank you for doing all that work and for bringing a charter and refining it to our satisfaction, and then we tell them to go home and forget about a committee? That's really bad. I mean, in my
It
humble
would be.
opinion,
I
that's
absolutely-
really bad.
I
for
agree
'em.
with you that would be a really bad thing. Okay.
So I just think,
But-
why not just make the
but
commitment to promise
I
them
will
that we're going to
not
work with them?
agree to establishment of a committee without seeing the charter.
see,
That-
we always create committee with a charter. And that's where
Okay.
we always do that. That's how we
I
did it.
would
We
like
never
to-
created a task force to create
Okay,
a
so
committee.
we agree that that would be bad form and we'll keep that in mind going forward.
Yes.
Okay,
So.
just want to make sure for the record that,
Oh, no, one
your
question,
motion is to
sorry.
create a task force
Yes,
to be involved in the climate action planning
Yes.
process.
yes. And with a
they'll have a
second-
secondary.
And then a
Mission.
second task is to develop a proposed charter, including tasks, composition, all the
Mission.
elements
right.
that go into the bylaws. What do we call them? Bylaws of the bylaws of the committee.
So
That
who
would
is
be
going
their
to be,
second task.
so who is going to be
And at
part of
that
this?
time,
task?
we would vote to either approve that or modify it or disapprove it. Okay, I absolutely agree with you that it would probably be a bad thing to ask them to do all that work and then say, no, but I'm not going to vote to approve a committee where I haven't seen a charter.
Gotcha. Okay, and one quick question from the staff, clarification.
Sure.
Would you normally, so with this task force, would we have one or two liaison council members working with the group?
That is up to the council. That is not,
I need to know the composition.
Let me make a follow-on statement. If my motion is approved, I would recommend that the council then recommend the composition of this task force so that we can move on, rather than move that to another meeting. We can establish the proposed membership tonight. Is that
Perfect?
that was
Yeah.
my follow-up question, and why I've had my microphone on for a while, is we either need an amended motion or a follow-up motion, as you
Follow-up.
stated.
Well, since if this motion doesn't pass, then it's a moot
Right.
point and we get started with something,
Sure.
do something else. If it does pass, then my recommendation is that this council determine what the composition of such a task force would be. That's my motion, and I would like to call the question.
That means vote.
Vote.
That means vote.
So I need to know the composition of.
Oh, we're gonna make a second motion
no,
for that?
No, not only I'm not talking about the council member, but within the task force, who we are going to include.
So, so Scott, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Perkins, sorry, we socialize a lot, during our closed sessions here, we have to talk all the time. Had recommended 1 to 2 alternates, 1 business at minimum, 1 youth, climate environmental nonprofit, 2 members at large energy industry, and 1 construction landscape. Would that work as a possible sort of starting point for the task force?
That would be a good starting point.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Everybody in?
What, is everybody voting? Did you say you got 5? You got 5 out of 5, okay?
That's what it says.
Okay, here you go.
Sounds like a
Okay, now,
follow-up.
a motion for composition.
I move to, for a composition of the task force to include 1 to 2 alternates.
No, not 1 to 2 alternates.
Oh, I'll
One-
say, or 2.
2.
Let's do 2, just in case. 2 alternates. At
alternate
1
and
business.
alternate 2.
Yes, please. 1 business. 1 youth.
When you say business, does that mean a San Ramon, a person who is a member of the chamber, is
We can
a
have somebody,
business owner, or works for a business in San Ramon? Could this be an engineer from Chevron?
I think it should be somebody who has a stake in the matter and can
Chevron
help.
certainly has a
That's
stake in the matter.
Chevron.
There's many people, that's
Yes,
the thing.
Okay.
So I think here's what I would say. There's many people who are part of the chamber, many businesses, right? I think that it would be probably wise to just maybe speak with the chamber about
Member, okay,
possible member from the business sector there.
okay.
1 youth, and do you need me to define the youth here?
Could
Yes,
be,
please.
Okay,
Yes.
I'll be more, let's just talk high school age, similar to teen council.
could it be a member of the teen council?
I would prefer we
No,
open that
becomes
door.
Awkward because we're gonna cross
Yeah.
school years.
And,
Okay.
and I think, it would be helpful for someone who is passionate about these issues. We have a lot of young people who are very concerned about this
Fine.
issue.
San Ramon resident? youth?
Yes,
San
yes,
Ramon
please.
And resident, and gotta be in at least 10th grade?
And then a climate environmental nonprofit.
Climate environmental nonprofit?
1 energy industry member representative. 1 construction/landscape representative and 2 members at large. So 2 members at large is really just kind of opening it up for someone who just has a very focused interest on this issue.
Yeah, and I would say they should all be San Ramon residents.
Oh.
Of
okay.
course, yes,
Yeah,
they would all
okay.
be San Ramon residents, please.
And,
Now, the
and I would
construction
say
landscape
the landscape
we don't
construction
do
type
those.
person, I think, ought to be
does business
probably
in San Ramon?
more,
It would be helpful if we focus on business in San Ramon, I think.
yeah, they certainly,
Do business in San Ramon?
Yes.
Do they have to, you see, there are construction companies that are established in Castro Valley, but the person lives in San Ramon, or they do business.
I think that the key definition that Mark and I talked about when we devised this list was talking about stakeholders. So whoever has a stake in the matter with decisions that are being made in terms of policy. So if they have a business in San Ramon, obviously they're going to have a stake in the matter because it may influence processes and things that we do here in the city. And therein, if it impacts them, it could impact us.
In that case, I want to be able to define it in a way that we know this person qualifies, that person doesn't qualify.
Perfect.
So if they have a business license in San Ramon, if the company they work for has a business license in San Ramon, landscape or construction,
I think if it's a business that, yes, that has, that works within our city and provides, for example, a service.
if they do construction in San Ramon, they better have a business license to work in San Ramon.
Right, exactly.
All right.
Through the-
Energy.
but that was also, that could be,
Through the mayor.
blow and go.
Yes.
Can we, when we talk business representatives, are we talking conflict of interest, Form 700 filers as well? As if they're conducting
At the
business in.
committee
city,
level,
non-committee?
Yes.
Do many or most or none of our committee members have to form 700s?
Commission does.
Our commissions and. 2 of our
Commissions I know
committees.
do.
And 2 of our committees, EDAC and ITAC and Open Space are Form 700 filers.
Okay.
There's a
think
potential
the-
conflicts of interest.
It would be most likely
Now-
that they would also be required.
At a task force level, would they, would you expect them to be Form 700 filers? If for this task force, because we voted yes on a task force. And this task force, in theory, has a time limit. And then we will, in theory, we would establish a committee. And so some things may change between task force and committee.
At this time, I'm inclined to say that there would not be a 700 filing required for the task force. But once we get into a committee, we would have to examine that more closely.
Okay. Before we leave this, like I said, in order to be ensured that we know who qualifies and who, do you have any ideas on energy? Person owns a gas station.
PG&E.
PG&E is or MCE is
Chevron.
part of that here.
Now, you see, MCE, they provide power to the grid. But they do business in that regard within the city. So MCE would qualify, you're saying? Okay.
Mhm. Yep.
So that the primary business of that member would be in the energy sector.
Correct.
Okay. So the alternates could come from any of those.
Of those groups, categories, absolutely.
Okay.
So do we have anyone from our education, school or education?
Not at the moment, but we can add it. Let's add, I mean, we could.
It becomes
Be a-
problematic if you have teachers that, if you're looking at somebody who's instructor, because their day is over at 3:30 and they have students and homework. My wife is a teacher and I know, well, she's recently retired, but I know how much time she's used to spend on preparation for the following day. And that might be problematic to try and get somebody who does that.
Or not maybe teacher, but anyone from the school district. Because they have a
I
major
think
stake in this
it's
whole
if
thing.
if you, I mean, I think what a teacher can bring in is the value of not, I mean, obviously we have one youth, but I think what a teacher can provide is feedback from the student body. This might be things that even provide an opportunity inadvertently for teachers to go back and provide some education to our young people on these issues that are really important. So why not? I think education is knowledge is power. Why not empower our young people to have more information? I'm okay with that, if you guys are okay with that.
Is that a eighth member?
I'll stick
That
with
would
the
be-
original 7.
That would be 9 altogether, because there's 2 alternates. So seven solid and 2 alternates. That's 9.
That's the motion.
Um,
And
ex-
I
just
will- I will-
Go
a
ahead.
couple of points before we go into the motion. First of all, it would be helpful for staff and for me, admittedly, if we could restate that motion with the composition. And then also, do you want to make a provision in your motion that if you can't fill the position for one or more of the categories, that they be converted to at-large for that particular term?
For the term of
Absolutely.
the task force.
Yes,
Correct. So that we're not held back by
so that you're not held back by a failure to appoint.
And I would be, that sounds good, actually, like a great idea. And so, okay, so the motion is that we will form a 7-member task force with 2 alternates, 1 member from the business sector. All of them will be residing, have business or reside in San Ramon. One will be
One we said was going to be a chamber member.
chamber member. We will confer with the chamber about someone who would be a good representative for the business
select.
sector in that capacity. So 1 business member, 1 youth, 1 climate environmental nonprofit rep, 2 members at large, 1 energy industry rep, 1 construction / landscape rep, and 1 educator.
Oh, so now we're up to 8.
No, that's 7. And that, I'm
Oh,
sorry, I
yeah.
counted 2. There's 2 at large. So make that, I'm sorry, it's 8-member group, forgive me. And then we have 2 alternates on the side
Now,
that,
by the
that-
way.
Yeah.
You said, one time you said education and one time you said educator.
teacher,
that-
educator. Do you
that's
want to
different.
be specific?
Well,
From school district.
let's say
Okay, teacher.
Rachel Hurd, who's a member of the school
Yeah.
board, wants to apply for that position.
So educational representative is right.
Do you want, so I'm sorry, Councilmember Rose, what was that?
Educational representative, someone who is part of our San Ramon Valley Unified School District.
Okay.
So it's any member of the San Ramon Valley Unified School District staff.
Okay. So an educator,
And the youth would be a San Ramon resident in 10th grade or above.
yes.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Perkins, for a point of clarification, what's the upper limit of the youth? I just want to make
Well,
sure.
I would
they
say
can't be-
18.
Could be. maybe.
Let me, they can't be graduating senior. Because if this task force goes on past June or July, they may not be available. So
Okay.
it would be 10th or 11th grade.
That's correct, actually.
I'll stick with the original 7.
Well, we have, the motion is for the 8 plus 2.
Right.
Do we anticipate this task force making motions as it's an even number?
Yeah, so that's the problem. If it's even numbers.
Go back
You
to
want
7.
to eliminate
So-
one of the at-large
We can eliminate 1 at large.
1 at
Okay.
large.
and the educator replaces one of the at-large.
Correct.
Okay, so.
And add the stipulation as requested that if we cannot fill one of the seats, we will make that automatically an at-large position.
Okay. And one other point of clarification, when you do suggest that, we consult with the chamber or require that they're a chamber member, or that we require that it is San Ramon Valley Unified School District staff, I believe you can ask that those entities appoint somebody,
Yeah.
or you may have difficulty getting applicants just open-ended. So I would recommend that we ask those 2 agencies. We don't have school district tonight. I don't want to put them on the spot, but I'm sure they'd be more than happy to recommend an employee with the expertise and the knowledge, and same with the chamber. So I'd recommend that
Way
those
we've
are,
done it before.
Superintendent for facilities.
yes. So for those 2 agencies, I would recommend that the council ask for appointments directly from the agencies.
As
Yes.
opposed for.
Okay, So we will make,
Amend? That
we
way.
will amend it to add that, for the educational representative and the business rep, we will have, the chamber for the business and the San Ramon, Valley Unified School District, appoints, basically make a recommendation to us as
Yes.
to fill that position. Okay.
And to clarify, those representatives need to be San Ramon residents, correct? Or
The,
no?
I think,
the education one, they just have to represent the school district.
right,
So,
right.
yeah.
And the business, or the key part for the business part is that they do have to have, the whole point is we want a stakeholder that does business in San Ramon. So in other words, and they have some kind of, stake in the matter at the end of the day, that on these, the decisions that will be made.
A business license, I've heard before
exactly.
discussed, if they have a business license in San Ramon and they're a chamber member, since the chamber is appointing them.
You
that
better
would
be.
Yeah.
So now because we give them the right, we're giving them that leeway. If for some reason we say we're thinking like, we'd like to look for somebody a little different. Can we have that exchange with the chamber and at San Ramon Valley Unified School District to identify possible alternatives as well?
Well, that would have to occur
Voted
with
down.
the full council at
Yes.
a publicly noticed meeting. I think what we normally do for committees is that during the approval process, after you've interviewed people, when we take it to council for final consideration, those nominees will be there and that will be your chance to discuss. And hopefully we would have reps. I believe we would have chamber rep there that night and the school district, if there are any questions about the candidates that you'd like to ask at that point, or the appointees.
Oh, okay, one.
One
Okay,
quick
no, just leave it. I was just thinking, because I know it was mentioned, our deputy city manager mentioned trades. If we should have somebody from the trades.
So how about that construct? I thought we are adding. one-
Maybe that's
Yeah,
part-
We should just
Landscape
change that to
construction.
trade.
That could be a
So
Moblo
maybe
I think we should
guy,
change
that
that
could
to
be a
trades.
trades
Just a
person.
minor modification. Maybe we can make that construction/landscape/trades, somebody in that sector.
Okay.
Okay,
Heard okay
that's,
from the
I think
second.
we've
too.
covered everything. Is that, I'm deferring to our staff here?
We have clear direction. I don't know
We do
if
a
the
vote
city
on this,
attorney
but
has
we've
any
already
other.
done it, right?
No, I
we
just want to
say
make
we
sure
go.
that staff
Yes.
has clear direction out of this motion and that it's been made clear enough
Yeah.
to follow.
I worked for a guy many years ago and my saying after working for him was, there is no horse so dead it can't be beaten.
I will try to reiterate I do have my scribbles here, so pardon me if it's slightly inaccurate, but
Okay.
I heard 2 alternates, 1 business member appointed
One
by
of
the
the
chamber.
alternates went away, was replaced by an educator.
Or was that at large that replaced?
I'll
Alternates, the
review it.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
So,
That was the at large.
Yeah.
At
Two
large was
alternates.
replaced.
Okay.
Never
I'll
mind.
start over. 2 alternates, 1 business member appointed by the chamber that has a business license, 1 youth starting at 10th grade, but not a graduating senior, 1 climate environmental nonprofit, 1 energy, 1 construction, landscape, or trade, and 1 at large, and also 1 educator that is appointed by the San Ramon Valley Unified School District.
Yes.
Yes.
Through the mayor, can I get clarification on a few of those positions, please? For
Vice
the,
Mayor will give them to you.
for the environmental climate nonprofit, is that a resident or non-resident?
Everybody, it will be, if it's a resident, everybody would be, so the ones that will be required to be a resident will be youth, climate, environmental, nonprofit representative, members at large, alternates. So when we talk about business energy industry, that kind of defaults similar to what the business caveat is that
So
they
that
have
could be a resident or non-resident?
for the energy industry. Yes, because it could be representing, what they're representing is the energy industry in San Ramon.
Okay.
And then construction,
land-
landscape and trades. I prefer for this to be somebody in San Ramon. And then, Same thing with San Ramon. No, actually, for the San Ramon Valley Unified School District, we left it open to whoever,
It's a San Ramon resident, 10th or 11th grade.
and the youth is a San Ramon resident. Yes, we said 10th to 11th grade because we want to make sure they can actually stay for a year at minimum.
Right.
And 2 alternates, and the 2 alternates will also be San Ramon residents.
Thank you.
Okay, you got a motion, you got a second,
You got votes.
you got 4 votes? No. Wait till you got 4 votes?
Says 5-5.
There we go.
Looks like we agree.
Okay, how about that? We're in violent agreement.
And there's that voice. Keep beating it. Okay, what's next?
Item 10, city manager and city council member comments and matters initiated.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, and members of the council. I do have a few items, quick items for update. Number one, Aspenwood Senior Apartments are now accepting applications. It is income restricted and priority is given to people who live and work in San Ramon, as well as veterans, first responders, public employees. There is more info on our city website under What's New if you're interested in applying. Also, this Thursday night from 7 to 9, we do have Voices of San Ramon teen and youth adult open mic event, and that's at our Front Row Theater at the Doherty Station Community Arts Center. Ages 14 plus are free to attend. Register ahead if you want to perform. That is also under the city's What's New website. And then the final announcement is Saturday, January 27th at 6 p.m. The San Ramon Historic Foundation will be hosting a crab feed. You can buy tickets ahead at srhf.org if you are a crab lover. With that, that concludes my update for this evening.
Good. Okay, council, who wants to start it off? I'll start it off. That was a great job, Sridhar, for MLK Day.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
You want one? Go ahead.
Yes, let's see, I'm a member of LAFCO, Local Agency Formation Commission. We appointed a new chair and vice chair, and we're diving deeply into the Alamo Lafayette Cemetery District because they have some financial issues. I attended the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C. It was a terrific conference. The weather sucked. They had 2 inches of snow on Monday, so the government, United States government shuts down with anything over about 1.5 inches, 2 inches, right, Mark?
Yep.
Mark spent a number of years there.
Exactly.
So we didn't have anything of consequence on Tuesday. Wednesday, we had meetings with Senator Butler, our new senator replacing Senator Feinstein, and her staff. Now, when I say we, it was the 4 mayors of the Tri-Valley and me as vice mayor. So we met with Senator Butler and Rob, who handles military issues, Nita, who handles housing issues, and Matthew handles transportation issues. Later that day, we met with Congressman John Garamendi. He is a little north of us, but he's very interested in Valley Link, which is the rail system that would go from Dublin Pleasanton out to the San Joaquin Valley. Then we met with Senator Alex Padilla, the other senator from California. He invited us to join him in hearing Senator Butler's what they call maiden speech. It's the first speech he gives to the audience of the senators that's not directed at a particular action, a Senate bill. Very, very thoughtful speech. And then we met with Senator Padilla and his staff. The following day, we met with the Government Affairs Office of the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. They have 3 members that live out there and work with the Department of Energy, the NNSA, the National Nuclear Security Administration, and with congressmen and senators. Then we met with Congressman Eric Swalwell, who has, I think, a tiny corner of San Ramon, but the bulk of his district is Pleasanton and over the hill and Dublin, and then over the hill into Hayward. And then we met with Congressman Mark DeSaulnier, who has the bulk of San Ramon going north and all. We specifically spoke again to all of these about Valley Link, and all of them were very interested in it. And Valley Link is about a $2 billion project, and they have almost $1 billion of commitments to date. So that is a project that is moving forward. Mayor Hudson sits on that board going forward. Met the Traffics, which is the congestion relief agency that runs what looks like school buses. And we discussed a number of things, including a contract going forward. The minimum contract inflation going for next year is 29%. We have not decided on what will be the fare increase. There also, we did a mid-year route review, and there are some changes out there that nobody will be left behind by these changes. And there's actually an opportunity to add an additional bus for California High School. So I have the maps if anybody's interested in seeing what the revised maps look like. But all in all, Traffics is moving forward. It could be a very challenging year. A 29% increase in the contract cost is a big pill to swallow, and there will be a rate increase next year. We haven't decided what that will be. So, one of the fascinating things in going to the winter meeting in Washington, we went to the embassy of the United Kingdom. And it's a beautiful, beautiful embassy. They had a reception for us on Thursday evening. And to me, one of the most fascinating parts of that was in the main stairwell going up to the room for reception, they have this enormous portrait of King George III. Those of you who remember your high school history will remember that King George III was King of England at the time of the Declaration of Independence. He's responsible largely for the existence of the United States of America. And I just found it really interesting that they would have his portrait hanging in the British Embassy. And that is my report.
Very good. And thank you for doing that.
You bet.
Okay, next item, please. Or no, wait, go ahead. Keep going, Shadar.
Thank you.
Norman talk.
Yeah.
I attended January 16, 2024 Finance Committee meeting with Council Member Armstrong. We did touch base 2 agenda items. One is waiver of plan review, permit and development fees for San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District Training Facility. The fee proposed to be waived is $547,340 as they are our partners, as long-standing partners. We did recommended to proposal of the waiving from the committee side. It will come to the council. The next one is the next item is we reviewed city quarterly investment report period ending December 31, 2023. So those 2 items. And then on the community side, I attended our Martin Luther King Jr. open mic celebrations. So this was pretty well attended. So like adults and youth in community, residents, along with public elected officials. Also good to see Heidi from our San Ramon Chamber of Commerce. And also Congressman Mark DeSaulnier was there. We honored our Cal High School principal, Demetrius, as part of this event. And thanks to Mayor Hudson for kickoff, and good to see Council Member Rubio for your speech. Thank you. So that's on MLK. The next item is, oh, by the way, MLK, that was hosted by San Ramon Valley Diversity Coalition, just to let you know. And the next community event was Path Yatra. This is a walkathon, that 14th annual walkathon that happened within our San Ramon for open space. It's around 16-mile walk. Thanks to our San Ramon City Parks and Community Services Department for helping them in organizing the event. It was attended almost by around 2,000 people. It's like, it's amazing. It was like a festival within San Ramon. The folks walked along the rolling trails and on the way to Tassaroil Ridge Trail. It was very well attended with the community. It was fantastic. So those are the two events. That's pretty much from my side. Thank you.
I only have to report is on the MLK open mic event. I just want to say, Sridhar, thank you so much to you and the San Ramon Valley Diversity Coalition. You guys really knocked it out of the park this time. We had an amazing, I'm sure you remember Heidi too, the amazing little singer that you brought there to that event. I was floored. I think she just took all of our breaths away, honestly. But you know, also, you just really, really brought it in on another level and on so many fronts. I think that really brought home, you know, the message of Dr. King. And so thank you very much for that. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you, guys.
Okay. And in the spirit of no horse too dead to beat, I will not go through the January 10th ad hoc meeting because we pretty much covered that this evening. I did attend the teen council meeting on the 16th of January last week. They made an announcement about this year's Teen Job Fair 2024. It's going to be in San Ramon this year. It is going to be on March 9th from noon to 3 p.m. at Senior Center. I attended the event last year when it was in Pleasanton. It's a great event for our teens. They do mock interviews. They do have employers there that teens can go talk to. They do assistance with resume writing and things like that. It's a great event. We also had Adam Chow from Parks and Community Services gave an update on the Doherty Station Community Arts Center in terms of their goals and different opportunities for using some of the facilities there. And then the teens also provided feedback on a draft of a teen wellness survey that will go out via Survey Monkey here. About 6 or 7 questions to kind of assess, gauge how teens are feeling about their own wellness. And then there was also some discussion about the teen and young adult open mic event, the Voices of San Ramon, as mentioned by the city manager earlier. So that's it.
Good. Anyone else? I'd just like to say congratulations to U.S. Air Force Officer Madeline Mays, the new Miss America. She not only walks a runway, she lands on them.
Did she land on a 400-foot deck that's moving up and down?
No, but she can drop a bomb on it. Okay. Next item.
Item 11, closed session. 11.1, convene to closed session pursuant to Government Code 54957.6 for City Council to meet with city negotiators concerning labor negotiations with the San Ramon Police Officers Association and unrepresented employees, police chief, police captain, and police lieutenant.
Are there any public comment
I
cards?
do not have any cards for this.
Then we'll
item.
open and close the public comment on this and see you in about 30, 40 minutes.
We have quorum, that's all.
Okay, we are back from closed session. City Council met in closed session to discuss negotiations with the Police Officers Association and unrepresented sworn employees and took no reportable action. We got anything more we need to do? Next item, we are adjourned.
Yours, Mark?